Welcome to month 3 of the Tech Lead track at BISTEC Hearts Academy. In month 1, you covered strategic architecture, the technical foundation of the role. In month 2, you tackled people management, 1-1 runs, feedback, performance reviews. This month brings it all together with the operational side, project and delivery management. Here is the uncomfortable truth most engineers discover when they become tech leads. Writing great code does not guarantee shipping great products. You can have the cleanest architecture and the most talented team and still miss deadlines, surprise stakeholders, and burn people out. The difference is delivery management. Today covers 4 critical skills: Agile leadership, risk management, estimation, and delivery planning, and stakeholder communication. These are the skills that turn a great engineer into a reliable tech lead. 4 hours, 4 topics. Hour 1 is Agile leadership, your specific role as a tech lead within Agile teams and the anti-patterns that trip up new leads. Hour 2 is risk management, how to identify, score, and mitigate project risks before they become crises. Hour 3 is delivery planning, estimation techniques, timeline construction, and capacity planning. Hour 4 is stakeholder communication, status reporting, race matrices, and escalation protocols. 5 objectives for this session. First, define what a tech lead actually does in an Agile team. It is not the same as a senior developer, and it is not the same as a project manager. Second, build a risk register using probability times impact scoring, a tool you will use on every project from now on. Third, apply multiple estimation techniques because no single approach works for everything. Fourth, plan team capacity with real velocity data, not wishful thinking. Fifth, communicate project status clearly to people who do not think in sprints and story points. These 5 skills are what separates a tech lead who ships consistently from one who is constantly firefighting. The fundamental question is, what is your job as a tech lead in an Agile team? It is not writing all the critical code. It is not attending every meeting. It is 4 things. Technical direction. You own the architecture vision. You make the build versus buy decisions. When the team is debating whether to use Azure Service Bus or Polar Database, you make the call and you explain why. You are not dictating implementation details, but you are setting the technical direction. Quality guardian. You define what done means beyond passing tests. No pull request merges without integration tests for new endpoints. Deployment checklists. Performance budgets. You are the person who ensures the system stays healthy as features pile up. Team enablement. This is the multiplier role. Remove blockers. Pair with the engineer who is struggling with the auth module. Distribute knowledge so the team does not have single points of failure. If you are the only person who can deploy, you have failed at enablement. Stakeholder bridge. You translate business needs into technical tasks and technical constraints into business language. When the product manager says, I want real-time updates, you say, we can do near real-time in 2 sprints or true real-time in 4. Here are the trade-offs. You protect the team from noise while keeping them connected to the purpose behind the work. Think about this. Which of these 4 roles do you think is hardest to get right? And which one do you default to naturally? Now let us talk about what goes wrong. These are the 4 anti-patterns that appear most often in new tech leads. The micromanager assigns specific tasks, dictates how things should be built, and reviews every line personally. The team stops thinking independently. This usually happens when a senior engineer becomes a tech lead and cannot let go of the code. The fix is to set constraints and goals, then let the team figure out the implementation. Review outcomes, not keystrokes. The absent architect is the opposite problem. You stay heads down in code, skip sprint planning, and never show up for stakeholder meetings. Your team drifts without technical direction. The solution is to be strategically present, attend planning, refinement, and retrospectives. Skip the meetings you can catch up on asynchronously, but protect the ones where your input shapes direction. The S machine accepts every feature request from the product owner without pushback. Sprint scope balloons, the team burns out, quality drops. The fix is yes and negotiation. We can add that feature if we drop this one. Always trade, never just absorb. The hero coder takes the critical path work because they are the fastest. This creates a bottleneck and blocks the team's growth. Instead, assign stretch tasks to growing engineers. Pair with them on the hard parts instead of solving it alone. Your job is multiplying output, not producing it. Moving into the second hour, risk management. The single most important tool for a tech lead managing delivery is the risk register, and it starts with this matrix. The concept is straightforward. Every risk has a probability of happening. Unlikely, possible, probable, or likely, and an impact if it does happen. Low, medium, high, or critical. Multiply them together and you get a risk score from 1 to 16. Looking at the matrix, a likely risk with critical impact scores 16. That is a showstopper, and you need to act immediately. An unlikely risk with low impact scores 1, log it, and move on. The scoring bands break down like this. 12 to 16 is critical, immediate action, escalate to leadership, activate your contingency plan. 8 to 11 is high. You need an active mitigation plan and weekly reviews. 4 to 7 is medium. Monitor it, have a plan on standby, discuss in retrospectives. 1 to 3 is low. Accept it and review quarterly. The key insight is this. Most teams do not track risks until they have already happened. At that point, they are not risks, they are problems. The risk register is about staying ahead. Think about this. What is the highest scoring risk on your current project right now? Have you written it down anywhere? Once you have scored your risks, match your response to the severity. There are 4 response strategies. For critical risks, scores 12 to 16, you need to eliminate or transfer. Assign a dedicated owner. Report daily to leadership. Activate your contingency plan. Consider reducing scope to remove the risk entirely. For example, your lead backend engineer gives 2 weeks notice mid-sprint while they own the critical path. You need to act immediately, reassign work, pair up knowledge holders, pull in additional help. For high risks, scores 8 to 11, reduce or share. Run a spike or proof of concept to validate assumptions. Identify fallback options. Pre-allocate buffer time. For example, you are integrating with a third-party API that has no SLA guarantee. Run a proof of concept, build an adapter layer, and have a plan B ready. For medium risks, scores 4 to 7, accept the plan. Check in bi-weekly. Document what would trigger escalation. Have a plan B on standby, but do not invest heavily in mitigation yet. For example, a new framework version might require migration during your project. Monitor release notes, plan for it, but do not block progress on it. For low risks, scores 1 to 3, accept and monitor. Log it in the register. Review quarterly. No active mitigation needed. For example, a minor UI inconsistency on a legacy browser that affects less than 1% of users. The most common mistake is treating everything as medium priority. If everything is medium, nothing is. Hour 3. Delivery planning. Starting with the part everyone gets wrong, estimation. There is no single estimation technique that works for everything. You need at least 2 in your toolkit, and you should know when to use each one. T-shirt sizing, extra small through extra large, is for roadmap level planning and early backlog grooming. You are not trying to be precise. You are bucketing work into rough sizes. Extra small is hours, small is a day or 2, medium is a week, large is 1 to 2 weeks, and extra large means it needs to be broken down further. It is fast, low effort, and great for epics, but it is not precise enough for sprint commitments. Story points using the Fibonacci sequence 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13 are for sprint planning. You compare stories against calibration stories that the whole team agrees on. Use planning poker so everyone votes independently before discussing. Story points capture complexity, not just time. An 8-point story is not necessarily 8 days of work. It represents an 8-point level of complexity relative to your baseline. But story points are meaningless without those calibration stories to anchor them. Reference-based estimation uses actual data from past work. The search feature took 3 sprints. This filter feature is similar in scope. Use your history from Azure DevOps or Jira. This is the most accurate approach when you have the data, but it does not work for greenfield projects where nothing comparable exists. Expert judgment with 3-point estimation. Take the optimistic estimate plus 4 times the most likely estimate plus the pessimistic estimate, all divided by 6. Use this for novel work, spikes, and research tasks where no reference data exists. Be aware of anchoring bias. The first number mentioned in a group discussion tends to pull everyone's estimate toward it. Now let us put those estimates into a timeline. Here is a milestone structure that works for most projects. N0 is project kickoff. Scope is confirmed, the team is assigned, and environments are set up. Your Azure DevOps board should be created, repositories initialized, and CI/CD pipelines scaffolded before anyone writes feature code. M1 is the foundation sprint. Core architecture, data models, API contracts, authentication scaffolding. This is where the architecture decisions from month 1 become concrete. M2 covers the feature sprints, iterative feature delivery, integration testing, and performance baselines. This is where most of the calendar time goes. M3 is the hardening sprint. This is non-negotiable. Never skip it. Bug fixes, security review, load testing, documentation, and user acceptance testing preparation. Teams that skip hardening pay for it in production incidents. M4 is release and handoff, production deployment, runbook handoff, and post-launch monitoring. On the dependency side, there are common traps that kill timelines because nobody tracks them. Cross-team API contracts that are not finalized, shared infrastructure provisioning, Azure, AWS, or GCP resource requests that take days or weeks to process. Third-party vendor approvals, security review and compliance sign-off. Map all of these in Sprint 0. For buffer strategy, add 15 to 20% buffer per sprint for unknowns. Always place a hardening sprint before release. Track buffer burn down weekly. If you are consuming all your buffer in the first half of the project, you are in trouble. And critically, never share buffer details with external stakeholders. They will assume it is slack and try to fill it with additional scope. Estimation tells you how big the work is. Capacity planning tells you how much work your team can actually absorb. Team velocity should be the average of your last 3 sprints. In the example on screen, that is 35 points per sprint. Use the average, not the best sprint you ever had, and definitely not the sprint where everyone worked overtime. That is not sustainable velocity. Focus factor is ideal hours divided by available hours. A typical engineering team has a focus factor of 60 to 70%. The rest goes to meetings, messaging, support tickets, on-call duties, and learning time. If you plan at 100% utilization, you will miss every sprint. For allocation by sprint, the recommended split is roughly 60% for features, 15% for bugs, 10% for tech debt, and 15% for buffer. That allocation bar on the slide is your planning target. Adjust based on project phase. Early sprints might be 70% features, while late sprints shift to 40% features and 30% hardening. Allocation models matter as well. A dedicated team on one project gives highest velocity and clearest ownership. Shared resources. Engineers split across projects, reduce velocity per project, and create context switching overhead. Track allocation percentages in Azure boards so you have real data, and do not forget the basics. On-call rotation reduces sprint capacity by 10 to 15% per on-call engineer. Leave and holidays matter. A 5-person team with 1 person on leave is at 80% capacity, not 100%. Check the team calendar before every sprint planning session. Our 4. Stakeholder communication. This is where many technically excellent leads struggle. You understand the project deeply, but the question is whether you can explain it to someone who does not think in story points and deployment pipelines. 3 reporting frameworks to master. First, the executive summary, weekly, 3 bullets maximum. Cover progress, risks, and decisions needed. Use RX status. Green means on track. Amber means at risk with mitigation in progress. Red means blocked and needs help. Lead with what they need to know, not a list of everything your team accomplished. Second, the sprint report Bi-weekly, aimed at your direct stakeholders. Cover velocity versus plan, burn down trajectory, scope changes and their impact, completed items, and carryover items with explanations. Build Azure DevOps dashboards for these. Set them up once and they update automatically. Third, the escalation protocol. For Amber status, raise it in the next scheduled meeting and propose a mitigation plan. For red status, send immediate notification, email plus Teams or Slack message. Never escalate without a recommendation. We have a problem is useless to the person receiving it. We have a problem and I recommend option A or option B is useful because it gives them something to act on. The ratio matrix clarifies who does what. R is responsible, who does the work. A is accountable, who makes the final decision. C is consulted, whose input you need before deciding. I is informed, who needs to know after the fact. The critical rule is this, exactly one paper rule. If two people are accountable for the same decision, nobody is. Looking at the example on screen, for architecture decisions, the tech lead is both responsible and accountable. For release approval, the client holds accountability. Getting this wrong is how decisions stall and ownership becomes unclear. Before moving to the assessment, let us consolidate the most important delivery lessons from today into 5 pitfalls and their solutions. Over-optimistic estimates. It will take 2 weeks without accounting for testing, code review, deployment, integration, and the inevitable scope questions that emerge along the way. The solution is to estimate in ranges: best, likely, worst. 3 to 5 sprints, most likely 4. Ranges set honest expectations and give you room to manage. Ignoring dependencies. Planning as if your team works in isolation, when in reality, other teams' delays become your delays. The solution is to map dependencies in sprints here. Use block by links in Azure boards to make them visible to everyone. Not buffering. 100% utilization means zero flexibility. One sick day, one production incident, and the plan collapses. The solution is to budget 15 to 20% buffer per sprint and track it as carefully as you track velocity. Silent failures. Risks materialize, but nobody escalates until it is a full-blown crisis. The status report stays green until it is suddenly red with no warning in between. The solution is to escalate at amber, early enough that there is still time to act. Always pair a problem with a recommended solution. Estimation by seniority. The senior engineer estimates for the whole team, but junior developers take 3 times as long to complete the same work. The solution is whole team estimation using planning poker. Everyone votes, you discuss the outliers, and the conversation matters more than the final number. Alright. Here is the challenge for this month. 4 deliverables, 25 points each for a total of 100 points. First, a risk register. Given a project scenario, identify at least 8 risks. Score each using probability times impact. Write a mitigation plan for every risk scoring 8 or higher. This should be in a living document format, something you could actually use on a real project. Second, a delivery plan. Create a 6-sprint delivery timeline with milestones, dependencies mapped, and buffer allocation shown. Use the milestone structure covered in this session. Kickoff, foundation, feature sprints, hardening and release. Third, an estimation exercise. You will receive 10 user stories. Estimate them using 2 different techniques. For example, story points and t-shirt sizing, and justify why you chose each approach for each story. Fourth, a status report. Write an executive summary, sprint report, an escalation for a scenario where the project has moved to amber status. Demonstrate that you can communicate the same situation clearly to different audiences. Scoring ranges from exceptional at 90 to 100, production-ready artifacts with nuanced analysis, down to proficient at 75 to 89, developing at 60 to 74, and beginning below 60. The passing score is 75%. The difference between a senior developer and a tech lead is not writing better code. It is delivering better outcomes for the team, for the project, and for the business. Today, you walked away with four things. A clear Agile leadership model. You know what your role is within Agile teams and what the anti-patterns look like. A risk assessment framework you can start using immediately. Multiple estimation techniques so you can match the approach to the context. And stakeholder communication templates so you can keep everyone informed without drowning in status meetings. Month 4 will cover technical mentorship and team building, growing the engineers around you. But first, apply what you learned today. Build a risk register for your current project. Track your team's velocity for the next 3 sprints. Write one executive status update this week. The best delivery management is invisible. When you are doing it well, stakeholders never get surprised, the team never feels overwhelmed, and the product ships when you said it would. That is the goal. Thank you for joining this session, and good luck with the challenge.